Hello and a very good morning to all of you. Also, I welcome you all to my today's online class. And today I'm taking a prose chapter from your 12th class main textbook, Flamingo. This is a sixth chapter of your book. So, the name of the chapter is Poets and Pancakes. And as I told you, it has been taken from the book Flamingo. It has been written by the writer Asoka Mitran. This is a picture of Asoka Mitran. You must know about him also. Asoka Mitran. He was born on September 22, 1931. Is one of the most influential figures in post-independent Tamil literature. He began his literary career with the prize-winning play Anbin Parisu, followed by many short stories, novellas, and novels. Novellas means short novels. He was a distinguished essayist and critic. He is the editor of the literary journal Kanai Yazvi, and he has written over 200 short stories, 8 novels, 15 novellas, beside his other prose writings. Most of his works have been translated into English. So this story takes place into Gemini Studio, and Asoka Mitran, he describes all his experiences in Gemini Studio, and this is situated in southern India in Madras. It was set up in 1940, and its founder was Mr. S.S. Vasan, who was also known as the boss. So this Gemini Studio, when you know its story, you have to come to know about its various fragments. That is, what was a Gemini Studio looking like, its makeup department, who was the office boy, who was Asoka Mitran, who was Kothamangalam Subbu, legal advisor, poets and writers, communalism and MRA, and lastly, the Stephen Spender. So let us now start the story. This Gemini Studio, it was always crowded with large number of people. So studio, of course, some makeup material has to be used. So the main pancake was a makeup material which was used in Gemini Studio. So all the actresses of yesteryears were familiar with it. Some of the names have been mentioned here. You can see them before makeup and after makeup, like Greta Garbo, Miss Gohar, Vajanti Mala, and Rati Agnihotri. They all have heard about this studio, but you quite possible may not have heard about this studio. In this studio, the chief specialty was that this was the favorite haunt of intelligentsia, of people of all kinds of region. Means this was a kind of national integration also. So what is the example of national integration that the author is mentioning here? For example, the makeup department was first handled by a Bengali who became too big for a studio and left. Then he was succeeded by a Maharashtrian who was assisted by Darwar Kannadigo, who was an Andhra, a Madras Indian Christian, an Anglo-Burmese, and the usual local Tamils. All this shows that there was a great deal of national integration. So what does the writer mean by fairy misery of those subjected makeup? So just listen. The makeup room of this studio had the look of a hair cutting salon with so many lights at all the angles around. So due to this innumerable lights, the writer says that these were subjected to makeup and they were feeling very miserable due to the light of these lights. You can see the picture. The makeup room was flooded with lights and was miserable due to the heat which was coming out of these dazzling lights. Now we must know about the chief characters here. Office boy was here. Office boy was a grown-up man, 40 years age, in the makeup department of Gemini Studio. He was in charge of the crowd makeup. He applied pancake on their faces with the help of a dipped paint brush. So strict discipline was maintained in this studio. The chief makeup man made the chief actors and actresses ugly. His senior assistant, the second hero and heroine, the junior assistant, the main comedian, and so forth. The players who played the crowd were the responsibility of the office boy. Kotha Mangalam Subbu. This is the main character, the chief character of this play, of this story. He was at number 2 at Gemini Studio. He was an Indian poet, lyricist, author, film director, and all these films were based in Tamil Nadu. He was also known as another Kalak. He was not so educated, yet he reached the top of Gemini Studio. He was a man of amazing genius. He was able to direct the directors. He suggested dozens of ways to shoot a certain scene when even the chief directors were failures to find the solution out. Now let us know about Subbu a little more. As I told you, he was at number 2 in studio. He had the ability to look cheerful at all times, even after having had a hand in a flop film. He always had work for somebody. He could never do things on his own. His sense of loyalty made him identify himself with his principle completely and turn his entire creativity to his principle's advantage. This is all about Subbu. Now the next is Asoka Mitran. Asoka Mitran was one of the staff whose job was to collect information such as the news events from newspapers and magazines and to paste them in files. The other staff considered his job out of place because he always was seen turning over the pages and pasting the cuttings. So the other staff was thinking that he is doing nothing in the studio. He is just workless. So this is how he used to work. From various newspaper, he has to take out the cuttings, the important cuttings, and he had to paste them at one place. So his job was considered thankless. Next was a legal advisor. The legal advisor worked in the story department. He was a lawyer and provided legal advices to the writers, yet he was known as a legal advisor. Well, this is a story department. In the story department, the legal advisor is there, the writers, poets, and the Subbu is there. So the legal advisor was always different from all others in Gemini Studio. He was always seen in pants and tie, sometimes a coat that looked like a coat of a male, whereas all others, they were in khadi dhoti, oversized, clumsily tailored, and also a khadi shirt. So this lawyer was always different from all others in their dress also. Now I want to tell you an episode of the lawyer and the actresses. There was an actress. She was extremely talented, but she was temperamental and she blew over the sets. Everyone was stunned, but the light switched on the recording equipment. Miss, when the scene was over, the lawyer switched on the equipment, and when she heard her voice, that how she was blowing over at the set, she was very much embarrassed. She was so ashamed that she was not able to continue with her work in the Gemini studio. Actually, she was a girl from the countryside. She was very simple and not much experienced. But now, she never recovered from the terror of the day. And that was the end of her brief but very brilliant career. So what was the reason that the lawyer always stood up from all others in Gemini's studio? He was a part of a story department. As I told you, he was dressing differently. He was always looking alone and helpless. He was a man of cold logic in a crowd of dreamers. He was a neutral man in an assembly of Gandhiites and Khadiites. One day the boss closed on the story department, and in this way, this lawyer also lost his job because all the poets were asked to go home because the story department was closed and he was not having his work there. Now, one important thing in this story is communism in an MRA. What is communism? Communism was a new political order that was spreading throughout the world, especially in Asian countries. Communism preached equality of people and abolition of poverty and class divisions, while it discouraged private ownership. But communism won a negative impression due to the capitalist countries such as America. So all the khadi-clad poets of Gemini Studio, they were having notion about communism. Most of them, they were Khadiites and they were the followers of Gandhiji. So they were all averse to the term communism. So a communist was a godless man. He is not any fear of God or any conjugal love. He has no compunction and killing his own parents of his children. He was always out to cause and spread unrest and violence among innocent and ignorant people. No Frank Buchman's moral rearmament army. It comprised of around 200 strong people, and once they visited in Gemini Studio in 1952. They presented two plays there, Jotham Valley and Forgotten Factor. The message of both the plays was very simple. The first-rate sets were there, costumes were also first-rate. Madras and Tamil drama community terribly was impressed by the scene of sunset and sunrise in Jotham Valley. The stage was bare, always the background was there, curtain was there, and a tune was being played on the flute. For some years, almost all Tamil plays had such a scene because they were very much impressed by these two plays. Gemini family of around 600, they saw the plays, they saw again and again because they wanted to see them again and again, and they also praised these plays a lot. Now there is a mystical story in this story. The mystery of arrival of a poet from England. But who was this person? And why was he visiting this Gemini studio? No one knew this. He was a poet or a editor, but he was very tall, very English, very serious, very unknown to people at Gemini studio. So the boss read out a long speech which was most about his place. It was obvious that he too knew precious little about the poet or the editor. But his visit was an unexplained mystery because no one in Gemini studio knew about this person. Now, after the formal address full of praise by the boss, the English poet spoke and addressed a dazed and silent audience. No one knew what he was talking. His accent was also different, and no one was able to understand what he was speaking. The audience at the Gemini studio, they couldn't understand anything. Their lives didn't give them the possibility of cultivating a taste for English poetry also. The poet looked pretty baffled too, for he too must have felt the sheer incongruity of his talk about the thrills and travails of the English poet. No, everyone was dazzled, no one knew, but at last the author discovered that who was this English visitor and why had he come to Gemini's studio. What happened? The newspaper Hindu, it had published a tiny announcement in an insignificant corner of an unimportant page. A short story contest organized by a British periodical by the name Encounter. The author wanted to get an idea of the periodical before he spent a considerable sum in postage and sending the manuscript to England. There were copies of Encounter lying about in various degrees of freshness, and they were almost untouched by readers. They were looking quite new, and they were in the British Council Library. The editor's name rang a bell in the author's heart. It was a poet who had visited the Gemini studio, Stephen Spender, because Stephen Spender's name was also there, and now the thing rang into his mind that this was the same person. Now the author bought a special low-priced student edition of the book The God That Failed, in which six eminent men of letters in six separate essays described their journeys into communism and their disillusioned return. When he saw the name of Stephen Spender among the authors, the reaction to Stephen Spender's visit to Gemini Studio was no longer a mystery. The boss of the Gemini Studio may not have much to do with Stephen Spender's poetry, but not with his God that failed. So this ends with our story. In the end, I must agree that the author vividly has brought out some of the eccentricities and some of the weaknesses of the characters in a very delightful and in a very humorous manner. Thank you so much for watching this presentation. Thank you.